Hey Luke, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. It's always a busy time. There's competitions upon competitions. That you're off to Malaga this weekend, aren't you? With few of your athletes who have you got competing?
We've got Jen competing, so she's an athlete from Scotland. We've got Justine competing, she's doing the elites as well. And then we've got Archie, who's doing, there's a competition within a competition called the Crown, and that's like an age group. Uh,
Okay.
I always forget how young Archie is when I coach him. Oh,
It looks old.
no, it's just when you see him throw around 160 in a complex after workout, I'm like,
Also
I,
true.
I don't know if I can hold that on my front rack, let alone. And he's what, like 21, 22?
Something
Yeah,
ridiculous. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so it's going to be a manic weekend.
Just give us like a little bit of an insight before we get kind of stuck into our like Q&A format that we're going to do shortly. Just give us a bit of an insight into like what goes into helping those guys prepare for this weekend.
Okay, so all the hard work in terms of nutrition wise is done. We lay the foundations when we work with them. So we go, okay, like what do we need to do? What do we need to assess at the moment? Is it our body composition? Do we need to upregulate health markers? Everything like that. So we create consistency with that. So we are upregulating their tolerance as such. And then the closer we get to the competition, we start to tick off more and more boxes with performance-based nutrition. So we'll do stuff like increase their caloric intake because their health markers and their body composition allows us to do that because of the work we've done prior.
Okay.
So we'll start increasing their caloric intake. We'll start to look after their central nervous system and dial everything in. And when I say dial everything in, we'll start to do like the top percent stuff. Like we will dial, make sure that our stress metrics are all in order, our sleep is all good. We'll make sure that we are using our pre, intra, and post workouts as consistently as possible. So when we come to competition, we know exactly what foods work for them, and it's like reinforcing that to say, okay, well this works. And obviously through a training week, right, we'll have sometimes we'll have high intensity, sometimes we'll have our weightlifting, and we'll just get the right food groups for them that they know that they can digest. And when we come to competition time, then we know exactly what we're going to use
Okay.
for that. And
Okay.
then the hard work is done, like for instance, today and yesterday. So they're the carb loads.
All
Um,
right.
so
How
what
how does that look? Because what I remember from carb loads is when I was sailing when I was younger, and it's like eat a kilo of pasta before you go out sailing for the rest of the weekend the night before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it blows my mind. Like when I go to like competitions and I see people, and it's no like it blows my mind. You know, I think, oh gosh, that's not going to digest when people are smashing pasta down, and then they've got to be on the comp floor in 45 minutes. I'm like, oh gosh, that's going to digest in like tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
People just don't know though, do they?
no,
Or
that's the
there's like the
thing.
misinformation out there or
Yeah.
whatever.
Or if they have like stuff like broccoli in there and fibers, and they're just like, gosh, please take that out. But so what that looks like compared to like yesterday and today for the athletes is depending. We need to know what the athletes like to know how they feel and the measure of foods that they can tolerate as such. But like anywhere from 50 to 90%, we can increase their carbohydrate intake by.
Okay.
Um, so to do that, what we do is we take all fibers, all vegetables out of their diet for them couple of days to allow your digestive system to take that on, because obviously fiber will slow stuff down and
Yeah.
take room in the stomach that we don't want to do. We also moderate the fat intake as well, because we can't have the carbohydrates going up by X amount of percent and then the fats be up as well. So we take that down
Okay.
for your body to be able to process that. And then we just devolumize food groups. So I'll give you a fine example of a way to devolumize the food group. Like naturally, if someone has oats in the morning and they have blueberries and raspberries and some whey protein in there, what we'll do is we'll have oats in there, and then instead of having the blueberries and raspberries, we can have 40 grams of honey and 30 grams of raisins, and straight away you've just doubled the amount of carbohydrates for that morning breakfast as such. So just really easy, because you can't really get, for instance, like Jen won't mind me telling you, but she's smashing in 700 to 800 grams of carbohydrates in. We can't do that by sweet potatoes and food groups like that. So we just devolumize your food groups, but make sure that we have a huge whack of carbohydrates that will be processed. And then what we do is tomorrow, so she'll be flying tomorrow out there, and then what we'll do is we'll go back to our normal nutritional protocols to let her body settle. So sometimes you can feel lethargic after having a lot of carbs and stuff like that. So when you say smashing in pasta the night before, what some people do, then there's a risk of feeling heavy, sluggish and lethargic. So we let the body settle after the carb. So yeah,
Again, this is probably stuff that people might have felt like on the day of competition, and they probably didn't know the reason why they felt that. But so some really good insights there. So one last thing before we go into the Q&A bit. So over the weekend, obviously you're kind of there to support those guys. But what does that mean? Like in terms for you as like their nutrition coach, how does that look? What does that mean?
So I listen to I listen to them, their feedback, and I listen to the signals of their body as such. And that's where I need to a lot of problem solving and a lot of going, hey, like obviously carbs are king over the weekend, but they still have to digest. So for instance, if they do a really their intensity's gone up compared to what they do for training. So cortisol levels will go up, fight or flight response, and the last thing that your body wants, it wants everything out for that to happen, right? Because it's like the saber-toothed tiger chasing us, right? Evolutionary times. So I'm listening to their body responses and what they can manage to get in. So for instance, if they've done a stinky workout, the last thing they want to think about is consuming solid based food. So I've got to work out ways how to wake up the digestion to shut down the cortisol and bring it down to then start the recovery basis. And you do that by sugar, but sometimes it'll be like, hey, like before you do anything, you need to drink this Lucozade, because if you go straight to solids, then it could upset our digestive system. And then we normally repeat a process of liquids, jellies, and then start to go to solids after, to wake it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So yeah, and like little stuff like, okay, well, hey, we've got an advantage here. We've got lifting event coming up. This is a time really to get like a good amount of solids we could get down right now to be able to do that. So yeah.
Okay. Another great little insight. Right. Since we last spoke, which was a couple of weeks ago, you've shared a few posts on Circle, one on macronutrient timings for kind of training, for performance, can be applied probably to competing as well. And then also how to structure your nutrition, depending on how many sessions per day that you're doing as well. In fact, you've done three. You've done fueling for AM workouts too. So there's actually three that you've done in the last couple of weeks. So basically what I've done is off the back of those posts that you've done, I've put together a couple of handfuls of questions that I think would be good to just beef out a little bit more and get a little bit more in the weeds with it, just so people can understand it and then maybe begin to apply some of the things that you've said in the documents a little bit better. So why don't we start with kind of people's general understanding of like nutrition a little bit more first. Does that
Yeah,
sound all right?
yeah,
Uh,
that sounds perfect.
okay. So the first one that I've got here is like what are the specific roles of macronutrients, like proteins, carbs, fats? Like just give us this, really brief, quick, 1 or 2 lines about what each one does, if you can.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Let's start with protein. Okay. The layman's terms of what people think about protein, which is right. Obviously, it helps our muscles. It helps them repairing everything like that,
Yeah.
which they do. So that's a recovery level of
Hmm.
what your proteins are, the workers within your body to hold up your skeletal, your structure, your cells. Everything's made out of proteins.
Okay.
For it. So your proteins is the role of recovery and skeletal and your structure. So what holds us up and keeps us together.
Perfect.
Um, fats are, I call them the diesel. Okay, fats are a slow
Mm,
burning energy. If you put petrol on the floor and put diesel on the floor, petrol is going to burn faster than it is diesel. So diesel does, it's an energy, but it's a slow burning energy. So fats are also therefore our hormone as well, and our hormone balances as well. So when you have an athlete who is more of the endurance, say high rocks, or in the endurance game, or like when we done the intervals on the bike yesterday, like that helps us with a slower form of energy. And yeah, so that's their role:
that
hormones
makes sense.
and slow burning energy. Carbs. Carbs are king of energy, so they're our primary energy macronutrient. Um, Carbs are there, obviously, they're stored glycogen within our muscles and they're to be burned off. So, and CrossFit is a glycogen based sport with the intensity. So, that's our primary energy macronutrient to be used. So, yeah.
Okay. Next, as like a general guide for kind of proteins, carbs, fats around training, what is like the very kind of general guidance you would give for people, like when they should probably be eating like maybe more carbs or fats? Like, is it fine to eat fats around training? Is it best to keep it away? Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Just
great.
very,
Yeah, great question. So it all depends on timing. So there's this might click in on the question number 4. So it's like the further away from training, the more balanced the macronutrients can be.
okay.
Meaning, when I say balance, that might not mean anything to someone, but like away from training, you can then start having more fats and more fibers within your meals.
Mm,
And I'll give you an example of a breakdown away from training. So it could be 40 grams of protein, 25 grams of fat, and 50 grams of carbohydrates. That, to me, that's quite a balanced macronutrient meal. And that could be chicken, sweet potato, and avocado. That's just
yeah.
right. And that's away from training. But the sooner you come around that training facility, so around 2 hours to 90 minutes, then you want to go into more specific macronutrients for the role that they hold, meaning you start to take fats down. A rule of thumb is I like to take fats down to 10 to 15 grams around
Okay.
training. Um, because fats obviously are diesel and they burn at a slow energy. Now, you
Yeah.
don't want too much blood breaking down food within the stomach. You want them in
Okay.
your muscles. So you go for a medium amount of protein, maybe a bit less than away from training, maybe 30 grams, and then 10 to 15 grams of fat around training. And then depending on the person, that's when you start jacking up the carbohydrates. And then
Right.
the closer you go into training, so from 90 minutes to 30 minutes, then you start taking protein and fats away, or fats even more, protein even more, and it just becomes the carbs are king around that.
Okay. Okay. So this flows nicely into our pre-workout section that
Mm,
I've got now. So, um, in your guides, you've mentioned having a pre-workout meal, which is
mm.
2 to 3 hours before, and then potentially a pre-workout snack. I guess be good to know the difference, but also if you have a pre-workout meal, should you have a pre-workout snack? or yeah, what's the kind of situation? Should you prioritize one or the other? Yeah, what?
Yeah, good question. So it depends on the person. Like it depends of going to yourself, okay, well, how if you're having a meal, say if I'm training at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and I have my lunch break at 12 o'clock, right?
Yeah,
Then it's just too much of a gap between lunch and training to have enough, say, to utilize energy as such. So if you have a meal at, let's say, half two, and you feel good on that meal, and don't forget, if it's 2 to 3 hours before, it can be more balanced. So you can then like offset the carbohydrates by having more fats in it, to make them last longer as such. And then just see how you train on that. So if your meal is 2 hours before and it's more balanced, then see how you do training on that. If you feel like you're lacking energy on say if you get your strength goes really well and then you come to your gymnastics and your conditioning and you're like, okay, well, what do I need to do there? Like if you're feeling lacking of energy, do you need a intra workout in there of just carbohydrates, which will be liquid carbohydrates, or do you need a snack an hour away from training as well, and that will be just carbohydrates of some toast and jam?
makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Uh, and toast and jam probably relates to this next question. Uh, why easily digestible carbs? Like why they preferred over like pasta or oats? Like that, everyone's kind of like pasta, oats, they'll keep you kind of sustained all day. But
Mm.
why do we go for more simple things, before training? Like,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, great question. Because it's in the name, isn't it? Easily digestible. You want something
of
to be,
course.
you want it to be something that's digested and then converted into energy. Hence the word metcon, right? It's like, hey, something to be metabolized into conditioning, right?
Yeah.
And if like great pasta, rices, bread, potatoes, whole grains, quinoa, that's all good away from training because then you're having that slow release energy to keep you going. But around training, sugar is a really fast acting energy that we can call on to then be utilized.
Simple.
So yeah. But so for instance, they've got like a 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. question there. So a lot of, especially up in Scotland for some reason, a lot of my Scottish clients train at 5 o'clock in the morning, right?
Okay.
And like, hey, like their pre-workout is going to be 45 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes before they train. So I'm not like even oats is too much to handle with protein. So we take that out and just go, okay, well, let's have some jam on a bagel with some banana. Like it's a low volume, it's got sugars in there, and it will sustain them. And we just utilize more intra workout to sustain their training session.
Okay. So on that, so yeah, your 5, 6 clockers, is that what you usually suggest? Like maybe
Yeah.
jam sandwich,
Y- y-
banana, just
Yeah.
really simple, dead sugary sort of, yeah,
Yeah, just be
breakfast.
utilized. And then what I do is try and call on their actual pre-workout, which will be their dinner the night before
Hmm.
or a bedtime snack to add in some more carbs in there. Then that's going to be their primary pre-workout meal.
Okay. What intra workout? Talk to me quickly about that. Like what is an intra workout? Like yeah, why should I
So
use one?
So intra-workout, and it's dependent on the person. Like it's like if we need to get our session done in one and we're doing 2.5 hour training, neurologically and physically, we're burning our rate of glycogen, which our energy levels come down. So to prevent that from happening is we want an intra-workout. So an intra-workout form of carbohydrate to keep us not only physically going, but our concentration as well. So stuff like Lucozade, stuff like carb powders and multidextrose. And if you notice, it becomes really specific into just the carbohydrate. Not only that, just the carbohydrate and liquid, because obviously it has to go into the digestive system and you don't want
It's
the
good.
body breaking it down. It wants to be just liquid.
So That obviously makes sense.
Mm.
How will I know if I need an intra workout? Is it do you base it on like session length, or is it the case like that someone might know off how they feel, and if it is
Mm.
feel, how yeah, what?
It goes, it's part and part. So it goes on length and feel. So like it's really hard if we train, if we just do an hour, where we have, some people have the luxury of training 3 times a day and they can just split it up into that, then you can get away with not having a pre-workout meal because you're relying on a good pre-workout snack. But if it's like over 2 to 3 hours, then like it's really hard to sustain the intensity, the progressive overload, and the volume on, like your body's just going to run out of energy. So, and then feeling, you talk to the person, you go, hey, like, do you feel lack of energy on, let's say, in that session, or the does your energy run out on Wednesday, where the accumulation of training for 2 to 3 hours in one session, and then your body can deal with it for a couple of days, but you get to Wednesday and you feel absolutely
Wrecked.
wrecked, and you're like, okay, well, how can we offset that a bit more?
Um, so, and again, you briefly kind of touched on it before. Um, if someone's going to the gym, there's a squares bar sitting on the side,
Mm.
um, or the mate has brought in their intra workout, which is a powder that they
Mm.
can put in a drink. Are you asking your mate, or are you going for the squares bar?
I'll probably, it depends if yeah. I'll probably go for, tend to deal with, it's all to do with how people digest food, but like I would go for the liquid carbohydrates. But if you're on a strength phase and you're doing 80 minutes of lifting, and then you're doing, trying to tick off the rest of your stuff, then maybe it'll be just as good having the squares bar. Like,
Okay,
so it depends on probably the phase that you're doing and how you digest food as well.
love that. Love that. We'll leave a little bit of mysteriousness there of yeah,
Mm.
uh, of which to go for. I like that. Going on to post-workout nutrition.
Mm.
Uh, so there was this whole thing a few years ago um, about the window of gains, and
Mm.
you didn't want to miss the window of gains, which was like 30 minutes after you finish your training session. And if you
Mm.
didn't get your maxi muscle smoothie in that 30-minute post session window, that's it. Your gains are gone.
Yeah.
How much truth is there to this?
So, like, your overall nutrition throughout the day will support your recovery. Okay, so that's like our primary, um, like recovery. It's going, okay, are we eating enough over the course of the day? So that will support us. But there is some sense in terms of, obviously, it comes from like the bodybuilding world as well. It comes from like, oh, how can we start the recovery as quick as possible? And it's the same for CrossFit as well. And it's not really just for recovery for our like body, but it's to tell our body to start recovering, because just because the clock says zero, our body doesn't know that we're out of that fight or flight response. Okay,
Yeah.
so cortisol is a chemical in our body that like is there for us to. It's a stress hormone. Okay, we need stress benefits and there's negatives to it. But to start recovery, stress needs to come down. And for stress to come down, we need to have carbohydrates, or we need to release insulin within our body, or,
Okay.
for that to happen. So the biggest one for CrossFit is to start to recover your central nervous system. And to do that, obviously, having sugar or having carbohydrates after is to tell your body, hey, start recovering now. Um,
Okay.
and
Okay.
and it depends on the person. For instance, it depends who you are. Like, if you're like, say, me, and I'm sprinting out of the gym to get home to do more work, then like, I'm saying to myself, right, I've got to be on my laptop for X amount of time. So when will I get my meal in? Probably for not for 2 or 3 hours. So to start recovery, then I'm going to have something as easy as a yazoo, or easy as I've never had a yazoo, so I don't even know why I said that. But it's a great,
That's a Steve Wimrow special one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. or something like a protein shake with the rich thrown in, right? The protein shake, and you just squirt honey in there, right? It's easy to have, right?
Okay.
So yeah, there is some truth in it, in terms of telling your body to start recovering.
Right.
And yeah.
Uh, for your kind of post-workout um, meal, smoothie, snack, whatever it is,
Mhm.
um, should it be predominantly be like biased towards carbs, or is there a scenario where it might be more balanced? Like, what's the idea of that post? What's the important thing about that post-workout, whatever it is, snack meal?
Yeah, so after, primary, because to shut down the cortisol, we need carbohydrates. So the primary would be carbohydrates, and
Okay,
then a medium amount of uh, proteins as well. So 30 odd
okay,
grams, 30 to 40 grams of protein in there. And yet again, you want that being absorbed as quick as possible and digested. And so having lower fats will allow to do that. And
yeah,
if you're having, for instance, I don't know, I'll give you a fine example. So if I blend up whey protein, 50 grams of oats, a banana, and I put some honey in there, straight away you're having the sugars in there, you're
yeah,
having the protein in there, and you're not having any fats. If you're having a meal after, you can have Greek yogurt, or granola, or you can have a bowl of cereal, or you can have some chicken and rice and Nando's jam on it. Like, do you see where I'm getting it from? So
yeah.
you're using the protein as a source, but you also the priority is carbohydrates and sugar as well.
Okay. So just touching on some practicality bits now. Um, if, say, for example, like during the last phase, uh, there was CrossFit Tuesdays, which were kind of really intense.
Mhm.
Quite, that intensity was staying for quite a long period. How might you adjust your proteins and carbs if there's a session that is like more intense, sustained for that period? Maybe the whole session length isn't quite as long. Obviously, like if you're doing
Mm.
strength, it's quite long, it's quite a sustained session if you're maybe following the strength bias.
Mm.
Whereas for those kind of, it's almost like a shorter overall session, but it's like
Yeah.
longer sustained intensity. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, so a great question. Like, I've thankfully got away with that because I was doing bespoke JSG, so I was doing strength. Thank God. Um, but no, that's a great question. So the automatic reaction, right? So when we do something intense, like it's say intervals, for a duration of time, and your heart rate's up, the natural response within your body is like, I've worked my socks off. I need to eat more. And that's the body just shocked, and that's the body just stressed out. It doesn't necessarily need to eat more. You just need to fund your, make sure that you put enough, like we spoke about, enough sugars around that training. And then what we're actually working towards is not burning out that central nervous system. So the more intense it is for a shorter period of time, the more the central nervous system will start to burn out, right?
Okay.
So when we go to ourselves, for instance, I'll give a fine example, something like acid bath repeatables, okay, or something like that, where you get off and you're like, I am like, I
But
can't move my legs right now, dragging myself along the floor, right? You do that, and after, all you're thinking about is going, I need food, I need to recover. And that's your natural response to what your body's doing. But what your body actually needs is just to rest, get optimal sleep, make sure that you're hydrating, making sure that you replace your sodium stores, everything like that. So it's more like the higher intense it is for, say, intervals based training, the more recovery you need with your lifestyle habits.
okay,
Does that
okay.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
From there. So, and obviously, your stomach, your digestive system could be a tiny bit out, where you won't want to eat, and then all of a sudden it hit you like a steam train. Then I'll just go to around it, just go to more liquid-based food to support that recovery and that fueling for it. Because likewise, you don't want to have a big meal before, even if it's a big meal of carbohydrates, of solid-based food, you want to then like dilute it a little bit with more liquid. So when you engage the fight or flight, it's not going to come up.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Um, Next question. So in the guides that you've put together over the last couple of weeks,
Mm,
you gave for the one versus two session per day.
mm,
You suggested for the one session per day that people should aim for roughly four meals if they can, and if they're doing two
mm,
sessions a day, aiming for five.
mm,
If someone's got like a pretty busy schedule around that, like they've maybe got work, maybe have to drop the kids off, that sort of stuff.
mm.
How can they like manage that meal frequency better with like being pretty tight on time? What are your maybe a few top tips for that?
Yeah, that great question. I think it's like when I talk about meals and snacks, like they can be as convenient or how if you want to prep and stuff like that. So it obviously depends on the individual. Like I have athletes who are so busy in the morning, they haven't got time to make breakfast.
Yeah,
So it's like, okay, well, we'll have like a dense protein smoothie, or we'll have a more convenient based food. So it's identifying where you are in the day or what does your day look like, and then use your structure to aid towards that. For instance, I am dropping my kids off, which I haven't got any kids, guys. Um, but I'm dropping my kids off to the school, and then I have a few meetings, and then I have my first training. Let's just say, like that's when you need to decide of going to yourself, right? Like we need energy still. How do we do that? Can we go in more convenient way? Can we just have a protein shake, some jam and toast in the morning with a banana? Let's just say. And then on the way after the meeting, then can we have a couple of squares bars and an apple with a yazoo or something? Do you see what I mean? So
yeah,
it's
I get
just
what you
like
mean.
use convenience to a time that you need convenience. And
Yeah,
then when you have more time on yourself, that's when you can prep and plan a lot better. So there is always a way. For instance, like I when you drive, there's always a garage to go into, and
of course.
that can be going, oh bloody hell, I've got 30 minutes to get into the gym now. You go into that garage and you go, right, Lucasade, and there's some cut pineapple straight away. That's 60 grams of carbohydrates. That will do. Like
Yeah.
like that is absolutely fine.
I
Um,
think I think that is it's a really good example of that, and that's obviously something that pretty much everyone will be able to do. I
mm,
think sometimes uh, it's not knowing when you walk into the garage, not knowing what to get. Um,
100%.
you're walking, you're like, oh my God, look at all these different things. I have no idea
Mm,
what to get. But you just saying that and being like,
mm,
get your Lucozade, get your tin of pineapples or dried fruit or whatever it is. Like
mm.
Bob's your uncle.
You're done. And you can even have the same away from training, the same approach to away from training. Like you can go into a garage or a supermarket quickly, run in there, and you go, right, how can I have a protein source, a starchy carb, a bit of fiber? And you could go in there and go, oh, wow, there's a chicken salad sandwich there. I'll have that. I'll have some fruit for some fiber. And I don't know, a whatever else with it, a Trek bar, let's just say, right? You're having 30 odd grams in the sandwich of protein. You're having 30 grams of carbs in the sandwich. Let's just say 10 to 15 grams of fat in the sandwich as well. And then you're going, right, there's only 30 grams of carbs in here. How do I add to it? Let's have a bar and let's have some fruit. And it's
Yeah.
still a balanced meal. You're on the go.
Mhm. That makes sense. It's
Um,
really good. It's really good advice.
yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Um, this is going to be my last question for you today. Um, which one should I go for? I'm gonna go for the I'll go for the timing one just to finish up.
Yeah.
So depending on what people's goals are, obviously some people are maybe trying to trim down a little bit for performance, like maybe they're following the engine bias, need to get fitter. They also need to like lose a little bit of weight for it. How should athletes modify like the timing of nutrition for that? Do they need to change it? Like what? Yeah, what?
Yeah, that's a great question, whoever asked that question. That's a really good question. So if you're looking to go into a phase of, say, body recomp or fat loss or something like that, where your overall intake becomes restricted, so you're expending more energy than taking in, and the same goes for your outlook on your the way you lay out your foods. For instance, I'll give you a fine example. So if I have, and this is an example, if I have um, my maintenance is 2,500 calories, so I'm going to go down to 2,000 calories. So I look at stuff and I go, right, I do CrossFit, so then I'll have to manipulate my fats down a little bit and try and keep my carbohydrates as high as possible within that 2,000 calorie marker. And then it becomes even more specific, because then you use your structure to aid for yourself in the day, and it needs to become more specific around training. So if I have 200 grams of carbohydrates to use for the day, and I'm giving that an example,
Yeah.
then you go for the approach of going, right, where are the carbohydrates, where are they important around training? So you need to give a certain amount of carbohydrates around training to support that training, which means away from training you then need to lower down your carbohydrates to meet obviously your overall intake. So for instance, if I have 200 grams of carbohydrates and I'm still trying to hold my performance and my intensity, maybe I have um, maybe I have 65 grams of carbohydrates beforehand and 65 after. So that leaves me with X amount within my meals. And then what I'll do is I'll have more
Okay.
vegetables
That makes sense.
to bulk out the meals um,
Yeah, that makes
to make
sense.
me fuller for longer. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That was good. That's good. That's a good way to kind of figure it out and do it. Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes complete sense. That's really good.
It's
Um,
ultimately you want to protect your performance markers and you want to protect your energy. And it's
yeah,
just like there is uh, if you do a fat loss phase because you need to lose X amount of weight and you do it properly, then yes, you can feel tired away from training a little bit, especially the further you go into the dieting phase, but you shouldn't lose performance markers if you protect it properly.
okay. Which is important to note.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is yeah, definitely, because people sort of pull it off and go, hey, like, and it makes sure it's away from competition, but they pull it off and you go, hey, like, we structure it properly, and like your performance markers, they could technically go up because it's like not having the weight vest on, and factors like that. So
yeah.
yeah,
Very good. Thank you very much, Luke. That
no
was
worries at all.
yeah, super helpful, super interesting. I just feel like just going into a little bit more detail on some of the things means that there's a few more practical steps that people can take into their own, lives, into their own training as well. So yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you, mate.
100%. And the people who listen to this and stuff like this, like, just drop us a message either on Circle or on our Instagram page and stuff like that. Because, like, when we put information up, it has to be generic, like
Yeah,
for people. But if you want it associated with yourself and stuff like that, just fire us a question and we'll get back to you.
love that. Thank you so much for your time, Luke.
You're welcome.
Have a good weekend.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
Malaga, yeah.
You too, buddy. And we'll arrange another one. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Luke.
Perfect. Cheers, buddy.